السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي بنعمته تتم الصالحات، والصلاة والسلام على النبي العربي المبعوث للناس أجمعين وعلى آله وصحبه من تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. Gives me great pleasure, as always, to be here with you wonderful brothers and sisters to deliver a talk. 45 minutes is all I have. The topic is quite heavy, the ideal family, and I was just speaking to the brother just now, 45 minutes to talk about the ideal family. Even if it was 2 hours, even if it was 3 hours, even if it was an entire weekend, we would just about touch the surface of what or how to focus on this particular topic. Some of the issues could be what makes the ideal husband, the importance of marriage, what makes the ideal wife, the purpose of being a husband and wife, what makes an ideal father, what makes an ideal mother, what makes an ideal son, what makes an ideal daughter, how to deal with the in-laws, or should we say the outlaws, the relatives, economical hardships that you have, financial hardships as a couple, dealing with life's ups and downs, emotional compatibility. All these general things are just touching the surface when it comes to the ideal family. So I thought obviously it's impossible to talk about all of these things in 1 hour, 45 minutes. So I thought let's break it down into two particular components that normally feature in any family, generally. Obviously there are some exceptions, and that is children and parents. If we can understand both the rights of the parents, the rights of the children, how to raise children properly, how to become a good parent, hopefully if we can cover this in the next 45 minutes, that would be success. And I want to really begin on touching on children, the blessing of children. I remember a friend of mine from Birmingham who got married really late. He was in his mid-30s. And I performed his nikah about 10, 12 years ago. And for 12 years, he kept phoning, messaging, Waseem, I don't think we're ever going to have any children. And they went to this country, they went to that country, they tried everything and anything until Allah blessed them with a child. You know? And there are people who don't have children. And I just want to focus on the first concept of the blessing of children. That is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Al-malu wal-banuna zinatul hayatid dunya. That children and wealth are what makes life beautiful generally. It adds more color to life. There's a bit more spring in your step when you have children in your house. There's a bit more vibrancy. There's a bit more of an atmosphere. That is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Al-malu wal-banuna zinatul hayatid dunya. And also I have an auntie, and I want to share this with you. She's in her late 70s. She's been married for 50 years. Her husband, rahimullah, passed away 5 years ago. Didn't have any children. For 50 years without any children. So I just want you to focus on the blessings of having children. That is why Ibrahim alayhi salam at a barren old age was making a dua at the age of 80. Rabbi habli min as-salihin. Oh Allah, grant me with righteous children. You know, at the age of 80, he wanted progeny, he wanted offspring to continue with the call of La ilaha illallah. So having children is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And ultimately, it's Allah who grants, as we all know. Even the gender, sometimes we focus too much on the genders. We're fixated, I want a boy, it needs to be a girl. This is all in the control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have, for example, Lut alayhi salam. He had 2 daughters, he had no sons. Shu'aib alayhi salam, he had 2 daughters, no sons. We had Ibrahim alayhi salam, 2 sons, no daughters. We had our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, 3 sons and 4 daughters. Anyone want to give me the name of the 3 sons? You know, I bought this for a reason. You know, you probably must be thinking he's got like sugar cravings. No, this is for you, and I'll give you one at the end if you remind me. I'll start you off. Ibrahim alayhi salam, our Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had 3 sons and 4 daughters. I'll start you off with 1 son, the name of the son, Ibrahim. Anyone know the names of the other 2 sons of our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam who passed away in their infancy? Qasim, that's one. And the last one? Abdullah, mashallah. So both of you will get 1 each. Remind me at the end, okay? And he sallallahu alayhi wasallam also had 4 daughters. Who wants to have a go with the daughters? And only 1 chance, the 4 daughters of our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. What are the names? Yes, sister at the back. Fatima, Zainab, Kulthum, yes. Ruqayya, yes. We'll give you that, sister, we'll give it to you. So there's 3 brothers, you have to be part of this. I know you can't say that you're keeping a check on your sugar intake. These are here, if you get the answers right. So we can see that the ultimate taqseem comes from who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You will have sons and you will have daughters, okay? But one important thing that we need to understand from this blessing that Allah gives us is that they come with an enormous responsibility. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah At-Tahrim, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا قُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَأَهْلِيكُمْ نَارًا وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ. O you who believe, save yourselves and your families from Jahannam, whose fuel will be rock and men. Meaning that there is a responsibility as a Muslim household to ensure that you raise your families up in a certain way so that we safeguard them from Jahannam. This is an instruction from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alongside this, we have our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam elaborating on this instruction of leadership, of looking after your children by saying, كُلُّكُمْ رَاعٍ وَكُلُّكُمْ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّةٍ. Every one of you is a shepherd and you will be asked about your flock of sheep. Sometimes we talk too much about the leaders, right? Isn't this true? This leader of this country, if I was ruling this country, I would be doing this. No doubt that particular ruler will be asked by Allah on the Day of Judgment about how he did his rulership, how he looked after the people. But we will also be asked about our leadership. Because the hadith mentions, وَرَجُلُ رَاءٍ فِي أَهْلِهِ وَهُوَ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهِ. That the man will be asked about his flock of sheep, his leadership, and he will be held accountable. This 2, 3, 4 bedroom house that you live in, 5 bedroom house, 6 bedroom house, even if you live in a 1 bedroom apartment, whoever is living with you in that house, that roof, your wife, your children, the man will be asked about his leadership. How was he as a father? Was he a person who was enjoining what is good, giving the best tarbiyah, being the best role model for his children? Was he calling towards those things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encourages to do in the Quran and Sunnah, and telling his family to stay away from those things that are prohibited in Islam? This will be something that the man will be taken to task for. Alongside this, the mothers will also be taken to task according to the hadith. وَالْمَرْأَةُ رَائِيَةٌ فِي بَيْتِ زَوْجِهَا وَمَسْئُولَةٌ عَنْ رَعِيَّتِهَا. That the woman will also be asked about her responsibility. When the husband goes out to work, and this was traditional, obviously things have changed now. Society is a lot different to how things were traditionally. Traditionally, just say we go back 50, 60, 100 years, and even before that. Generally, the man was the breadwinner, and the woman used to stay at home, looking after the kids, tarbiyah, upbringing, which was also a major responsibility. And the hadith here implies that whilst the husband has gone out to work and fend and do everything to bring bread to the table, it was upon the woman, the mother, to become the first madrasa, the first learning academy, you can say, the first learning faculty to raise the children. Because obviously they would have more children, exposure with the children than they would have with the father. You know, and it's sad today that things have changed so much in terms of the amount of exposure we give to our children. It's all dunya, dunya, dunya. We don't give our children any time. There's one analogy somebody gave in a talk, and I thought that was powerful, mind-blowing. I thought I want to share this with you. There was a man, multi-millionaire, every day working, building his empire, making loads of money. But that came at a cost. And the cost was what? In the morning, crack of dawn, whilst his family was asleep, he's gone to work. In the middle of the night, when they're still asleep, he comes back. And he would do this daily, weekly, monthly. One day, his son got up in the morning, his 7-year-old son, who hadn't seen dad for many years. He comes down at 4:30 in the morning. Dad, where are you going? Dad starts putting his suit and tie on. I'm going to work. Dad, but you're always at work. Yeah, but you can see the benefits of me working. You can see the big house, the cars, the holidays that we have. I need to make the money, as you know. Yeah, but Dad, how much are you on? I'm on £50 an hour, was the response. Dad, wait here for 1 second. The 7-year-old runs upstairs, goes to his piggy bank, breaks open the piggy bank, comes down and starts counting the notes. 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50. Dad, here's £50. Please give me 1 hour of your time. I have never seen you for the past few weeks and months. Sad. And similarly, we have our mothers. MashaAllah. Balancing career with being a parent. Some stories we get is that they drop their child off to the creche in the morning. 3, 4-year-old child. Goes to work, comes back in the evening, and when the mother collects the child, takes the child home, the child begins to cry. Because the child really doesn't recognize the mother, because the child spends more time with the nanny in the babysitting, in the creche. So whilst the mother is about to feed the child is non-responsive. When the mother is trying to change the clothes, non-responsive. So the mother has to call the nanny. Hi, do me a favor. Can you catch a taxi? I will pay you. Come to my house and put my child to sleep. Child is non-responsive, doesn't recognize me. SubhanAllah, we have these cases because the child has limited exposure to the biological parent because of the dunya. So, the way I want to break this talk down is I want to give 3 rights of the parents that you should give to your children, and vice versa towards the end, the rights of parents from a children's perspective. So if you are sitting here, I see some teenagers, some youngsters, what rights should you be giving to your parents to make the ideal family? And many parents who are sitting here, what rights should you give to your children to make the ideal family? Okay, so we want to begin from a parental perspective, the rights that your children should have. The first right is Islamically, you have to ensure that you give your children the best Islamic upbringing so they know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. If Allah is saying, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, the only reason you have been created and placed in this dunya is to worship me. That is basically the whole purpose. Then as parents, as gatekeepers for our children, we must inculcate into them the importance of knowing who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And this means, for example, they begin to pray at a young age. You teach them how to pray, and then when it becomes mandatory and obligatory, when they hit the age of puberty, they must be praying with you as a parent. They must know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Our tradition teaches us that every child is born upon the fitrah of knowing who Allah is, but it's then the parent who makes them either non-Muslim, Hindu, whatever religion, but the child is born on the pure fitrah. It's up to us to make sure we keep that conditioning going. linking them to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowing who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, keeping them exposed to Islamic teachings and away from things that will pollute the fitrah. You know, one of the things that we see, unfortunately, in family weddings nowadays, and this, we never saw this when we were growing up, is conflicting signals from what the child is getting in madrasa and what the child is then exposed to because of the negligence of the parents. The child, when you send them to madrasa, are getting conflicting signals. How? Child is taught in the madrasa, you must pray. The first question you will be asked on the Day of Judgment is pray to Allah. Is about your prayer. Allah is one, no partners, all these things. And then the child is thinking, yeah, but my dad doesn't pray. My dad is 30, he's 40, he's 50. I'm being taught that you must pray 5 times a day to Allah. You must remember Allah. But my dad, who's sending me to this institution called a masjid, he doesn't pray himself. I'm being told about the importance of these Islamic requirements, yet my parents aren't doing that themselves. So they're getting conflicting signals. The second one is weddings. I keep saying this. Wallahi, when we were kids, the wedding system was completely different. There was no like small-scale Bollywood nightclub that we see now. You know, belly dancers and people taking fire into their mouth, everything under the name of entertainment. Wallahi, we never saw this when we were growing up. And again, if you take your children to these environments, they are seeing these things and then thinking a bit conflicting, because in madrasa I was taught that all these things are not conducive to a proper Islamic family or development of a Muslim. Yet mummy and daddy are taking me to this place where I'm exposed to these things. So the point I want to make is, brothers and sisters, we will be asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about the type of environment that we created for our children. The pastures that your sheep, remember the hadith mentions that you are kullukum ra'in. Ra'in is a shepherd, and you'll be asked about your flock of sheep. It's a metaphor. Your flock of sheep meaning your children. Did you allow them to pasture in areas which were forbidden? Did you say, oh, it's okay, your life, do what you want? Or did you, as gatekeepers, until they were at an age to make the right decision, did you shape and mold their character and identity to make sure that they are people who know and understand why they were created? That's the first point. The second point is, you have to make sure that you are their best friend. You have to give them emotional support. Yeah? Unfortunately, what we see in today's day and age is many parents don't give their children that emotional support because they themselves were raised up in a particular culture, and then they impose that culture onto their parents. It doesn't work like this. It doesn't work like this. I'll give you my own example. I come from a Pakistani background, and when we were young, this was the culture. Anyone else that can, this resonates with them as well, I'm sure. When the father came into the house, everyone was quiet out of respect. Okay? Dad's gone, he's labored for 10 hours in the factory, in the foundry. He comes in, he's the king of the castle. Everyone was quiet. Somebody would take off his shoes, somebody would rub his feet, asking for this. This was generally the norm. And they themselves would do that to their parents. When their parents worked in the farms in Pakistan, they would make sure that they would tend to the affairs of their parents when they came back, looked after them, massaged them, whatever. Very rare was it that somebody would say, Dad, do you fancy a game of football? They would have said, hey, do you see my size 9 boot here? You know, because it was very uncommon at that time to be seen with your son or daughter playing football, cricket back in the 70s, 80s or 90s, wherever. Because they were used to this particular type of upbringing and they imposed that upon us. Now, times have changed. You cannot be that person who's robotic, you don't have any emotion, you don't express any emotion to your children, you walk in and everyone's scared. Oh my God, Adolf Hitler's walked in, everybody quiet. Oh, no. You have to be the person who comes in, asks everyone how they're doing, ask your son or daughter, you want to play football, you want to go out, you want to go on the bikes, you want to go swimming. The point I'm making here is if you do not give your family or your children that emotional love and support, and you close that gate, that void will be filled with the wrong people. And that's what we normally get. When we have people, youngsters, who have gone off the rails, generally you will find that they had a bad upbringing. So they had a paradigm shift where they began to see the world in a different way. Hatred. And then they found the roadmen on the streets. Hey bro, come on, I'll be your friend. And then they get caught up with the wrong people. That is why our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said the importance of friendship. الرجل على دين خليله فلينظر أحدكم من يخالل. A man will be on the religion of his friend, on the way of his friend. He will follow him in every way. So look as to who you make your friend. If your friend is a guy who's known to sell drugs, I'm talking youngsters here, or he's a roadman, or he's a certain way, stay away from these people. And generally those people who gravitate towards these people are again people who didn't find the love and emotional support and bonding at home. So that's something you need to give, and it's an emotional, it's a fundamental right of a child that you as their biological parents, you give them that love and support. So one is give them time. Second is spend on your children as well. Spending, our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, sadaqah isn't what you just give to the fuqara and the masakeen and the aitama and say, oh, this is... No, even spending on your family is a means of sadaqah. So for example, if you take your family out now and you spend £100 on them, at a grill place, you get the same reward as feeding somebody in Yemen or wherever. It's charity. Both are charity. You're spending on your family, which creates love and harmony and brings you together as a unit. That's very important. So the first part we spoke about giving the religious upbringing to your children, the support, religious support. Second is giving them the emotional support, the emotional love, compassion, giving them those positive feelings so they know that they belong to a family that loves and cares for them. You know, subhanAllah, again, going back to our culture, how many times do we hear, you know, our parents, Indian subcontinent, I don't know how it is in the Arab lands, countries that you come from, or non-Arab Africa, wherever you come from, but many times, you know, if as youngsters, when somebody did something wrong, the parents would invoke Allah's wrath upon the child. May you be doomed, may you this, may you do this. Our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam told us not to do this. Hadith collected by Imam Muslim, لا تدعوا على أنفسكم وعلى أولادكم. Do not invoke a curse upon yourself and on your children. Why? Because if it coincides with the time of acceptance, it's all over. Don't make this into a habit. Are you always lazy as a son? May Allah curse you. May Allah make you a person who doesn't succeed in life. Because if that happens to come at a time of acceptance, you have killed off that son or daughter. That is why our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam is saying, do not firstly invoke Allah's curse upon yourselves and then upon your ala awladikum, on your children. So again, this is part of the emotional love and support and giving them that emotional stability. In another narration, our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was kissing his grandchildren. And a man came to our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam and he was very stoic. Stoic means you don't express emotion. Very kind of Robocop, you know, like kind of. He said, I have 11 children. I have never kissed one in my life. Because that was the way that they were in those days. You know, a man was supposed to be very macho. He said, I have 11 sons. I have never kissed man. It's not very manly. Our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Man la yarham la yurham. Whoever does not show mercy will not receive mercy from Allah. It's not my fault Allah has extracted from your heart the rahmah that you cannot even show your own children love and compassion. Subhanallah. In another narration, our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, collected by Imam Tirmidhi, Laysa minna man lam yarham saghirana. They are not from amongst us who does not show rahmah to our youngsters. That person is not from amongst us. He's not following the way of the Prophet by showing love, compassion, mercy to the young ones. So I want to conclude the second part by saying that emotional love and support, that is the bedrock of making a great family. You cannot deprive your child of this, parents. We're not living in the dictatorial kind of days of the old. Thou shalt do this and thou shalt do that. Thou shalt clean your room at 6 p.m. prompt and thou shalt wake up at 8 a.m. and relax a bit, you know. This is what our religion teaches us. And the third one is, you will be tested with your children. But there's immense reward in raising children. You have to be patient. There'll be highs and lows. Sometimes you will be the best parent. And you will do everything for your daughter or your son, but still they will give you a hard time. Know that your reward lies with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, our deen covers everything. Let me give you one hadith, for example, collected by Imam Muslim, relating to girls. Girls, yeah? In the Arab culture, unfortunately, back in the days, a girl was seen as, oh my days, you've had a daughter. That's why daughters were buried alive. Unfortunately, in the Indian subcontinent to this day, if you have a son, mashallah, mabruk. Here's some mityain. Have some barfi, jalebi. If you have a girl, oh my days, you know, don't worry, Allah ni marziya. Have some Bombay mix. You've come to my house anyway, have some slooniya. It happens. Our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said in a hadith, Man ala jariyatayn hatta tablugha. Whoever raises two girls until they reach the age of puberty, جاء يوم القيامة أنا وهو وضم أسابيعه. He said, I and that person will be in Jannah like this. Whoever raises two daughters, proper upbringing, they go on to get married, become mothers, tarbiyah, that person will be with our Nabi like this. Look at the stark contrast in comparison to the way we think. Oh my God, it's a girl. Oh my God. Now, this is why Islam came to abolish this kind of sexism, you can almost say. Gender bias. We have Surah An-Nisa, the chapter of women in the whole chapter that is dedicated to women in the Quran. You don't have Surah Al-Rijal in the Quran, a surah about men, about women. In another narration, our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, who should you love after Allah and His Messenger? Your mother 3 times. I'll come on to that later on towards the end of the talk. So, there's great reward. So if you have daughters, alhamdulillah, don't get put off. What if you raise your children up and you die, what is the reward for you in the grave? Again, we have the hadith collected by Imam Muslim. Our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, إِذَا مَاتَ الْإِنسَانُ إِنْقَطَعَ عَنْهُ عَمَلُهُ إِلَّا مِنْ ثَلَاثٍ. When a person dies, when you die, everything will be cut off, apart from 3. عِلْمًا يُنْتَفَعُ بِهِ, beneficial knowledge, that you wrote a book, you did something that people are benefiting from. Sadaqatun jariyah, you raise, you build a well, you build a masjid, people are benefiting from this. And the final one is waladun salih yad'ula, righteous children who make dua for you. Now the ulama here, they say, the messenger said waladun salih. He didn't say waladun yad'ula, a child who prays for you. He said a righteous child who prays for you. Meaning that you have to raise your children up upon obedience to Allah and His Messenger. And sadly, what we get in our cultures is the father doesn't pray, children don't pray. When the parents die, the children gather 100 people together, they read the Quran, and it's mashallah, I've had my father forgiven. No. Every prayer that the child did not pray under the guardianship of the parent, that parent will be asked in the grave. This is something to think about. This is waladun salih, a righteous child. This is what it means. Anything good that the child does, the parent will get this by default as the reward. If they didn't do anything under your guardianship, you didn't, subhanallah, give them the importance of prayer, and they were just, but you gathered 100 people, mashallah, everybody's going through the Zabar Zera and saying, I read 5 times Surah Yasin and 5, doesn't mean anything. And the last point I wanted to mention in terms of the reward is sometimes you may lose a child before you. So instead of the child having to bury you, and then you get the reward because you've raised a righteous child and everything they do, you get the reward in your grave, sometimes it could be that you will have to bury your child. And this happens. In Dewsbury, one of the elders from Islam Dewsbury, we prayed the janazah of one of the elders, the women, our grandmother. She was 90 odd years old. She passed away. And standing in that congregation when we were doing the tadfeen, the burial, was a brother who was in his 40s, who was also related. In the morning, as we got up for Fajr, we got the shocking news that he passed away at 2 o'clock in the morning. Shocking, of a heart attack. And I remember being there, seeing the father who was in his 70s, shaking. It's a big musibah, big mushkilah. Having to bury your own child that you saw, who took his first steps, who said his first words, you took him to school, he became a man, he got married, he had children, and now you are having to bury him. This is what some families have to go through. Yet there is a reward in this. Our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, hadith collected by Imam Tirmidhi, إِذَا مَاتَ وَلَدُ الْعَبْدِ قَالَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ. When the child of a slave of Allah dies, Allah says to the angels, قَبَدْتُمْ وَلَدَ عَبْدِي. Have you taken the child of my slave? فَيَقُولُونَ نَعَمْ. The angels say yes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَبَدْتُمْ ثَمَرَ فُؤَادِي. Have you taken the coolness of the eyes of the father or the mother? فَيَقُولُونَ نَعَمْ. Yes. مَاذَا قَالَ عَبْدِي. What did my slave say? And the angels say, حَمِدَكَ وَاسْتَرَجَ. He praised you and he was content, and he was saying, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. To Allah we belong and to Allah we shall return. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? أُبْنُوا لِعَبْدِي بَيْتًا فِي الْجَنَّةِ سَمُّوهُ بَيْتَ الْحَمْدِ. Build for my slave a place, a house in Jannah, and call it the house of praise. Imagine. What may seem like a big trial, you are being upgraded in Jannah because of being patient and being thankful to Allah. All of this only happened because you lost a child. And that's why we're saying what's happening in Palestine. All of these people who are losing their children, they are patient because they know what the religion teaches them. And that is why many people across the world are inspired by the spiritual strength of the people of Gaza. They're seeing mothers who are holding their children dead, lifeless, and they're saying, to Allah we belong, to Allah we shall return. Allah is sufficient for us as a protector. And many people in the West are saying, wow, remarkable spiritual strength. Where did they get this from? That they are patient, they are content, they are losing their children, and yet they are saying, to God we belong and to God is our return. So, brothers and sisters, I wanted to mention these 3 important points when it comes to the rights of children. Let me just go over them again quickly. The first one is the importance of giving them religious knowledge. Second is emotional love and support. And the third is to know that you will be rewarded and you'll get everything in your spiritual bank account if you raise your children up properly in the akhirah. Okay? Now, let's go over to the children. What to expect as a parent from your child. First thing, unfortunately, what I see, and I deal with a lot of youth when I go and do khutbahs in masajid, I get all these complaints all the time. Wallahi, the youngsters are out of touch with the reality of the real day-to-day struggle that their parents went through just to raise them up. They think it just came like this. You know, dad just, does this and money comes in. Mum just does this and, the food is on the table and clothes are done. They don't know the day-to-day struggle that the parents went through, the hardships that they went through, the sleepless nights when we were growing up. Obviously, the child cannot remember when they were 2 or 3 years old, going to the A&E in the middle of the night because the child had stomach pains. The father and the mother both had to go to the A&E at 3 o'clock in the morning on a busy weekend night, and you have to sit in a hospital where there are other people who are drunk and they're fighting and there's all sorts of antisocial behavior. But because your parents loved you, they were doing all this, but the children don't realize this. So when they get to the age of 8, 10 and the hormones kick in, you didn't do anything for me anyway. Subhanallah. So the first one is to appreciate the hardships that your parents went through. Appreciate this and you will have an ideal family. Especially our elders. I remember, we are third, fourth generation. Those who came in the 60s, they used to work 16, 17 hours a day. There was no FaceTime. There was no social media. How are you doing, mum? How are you doing, dad? They used to get letters informing them that their parents had died a week after their parents had died. Royal Mail wasn't overnight. The air mail took a week or two. Not everyone had the privilege of having a phone in the 60s and 70s. And they would cry knowing that their father or mother had died in Pakistan, India, and they couldn't do anything. You couldn't just say, catch the plane and go. You were stuck in this country because we were here as economic migrants. Knowing that that was your father or your grandfather who struggled like this, and we don't value that struggling, subhanallah, think about this. So the first thing is, oh children, youngsters, have mercy on your parents. Allah teaches us this to us in the Quran, the dua, رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِ صَغِيرًا. Oh Allah, have mercy on them the same way they had mercy on us when we were small. When you used to wet yourself and you were sleeping with your mother used to wake up in the night, pick you up, put you onto the dry side, and she would sleep herself on the soiled part of the bed. You don't remember this now, do you? Because I'm a gangster now. My life. I can do what I like. I can rebel. I can see my mother being upset at my father, but it's my life. Who are you? That's the kind of attitude that we're getting from the youngsters. Our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam cursed. Famous hadith. In fact, he didn't curse. The angel Gabriel, Jibreel cursed. When he came from the 7 heavens, when our Nabi was ascending the mimbar, he said, Ameen 3 times. The companions were shocked. Why have you stepped on the mimbar and said, Ameen, Ameen, Ameen? The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Jibreel alayhi salam came down to me today and he made 3 du'as and he said to each du'a, Ya Rasulullah, say Ameen to each of these supplications. The first one was, whoever says your name and the other people don't say sallallahu alayhi wasallam, they don't send durood upon you, may that person be cursed. Our Nabi said, Ameen. The second, whoever sees the month of Ramadan come and go and they do not have any change in them, there's no reformation in their spirituality, there's no more connection with Allah, it's just been about abstaining from food and drink, that's it. There's no incremental increase in your spirituality, may that person be finished. Our Nabi said, Ameen. And the third one was, رَغِمَ أَنفُهُ ثُمَّ رَغِمَ أَنفُهُ ثُمَّ رَغِمَ أَنفُهُ وَمَنْ أَدْرَكَ وَالِدَيْهِ إِنْدَهُ الْكِبَرِ أَحَدَهُمَا أَوْ كِلَيْهِمَا ثُمَّ لَمْ يَدْخُلِ الْجَنَّةِ. A person, our Nabi began the hadith by saying, may that person's face be rubbed on the floor. It's a metaphor to say, may that person be disgraced, who lives till an age where one or both of his parents are old. They need his help. They need her support. Yet they shun the parents away. Go on, get into an old people's home. We don't want you. Get out. Turn your back on the parent. Don't give them that love. Don't become that source of love for them. That person will be deprived of heaven. Jibreel said this. Our Nabi said what? Ameen. Imagine, will this dua, do you think, not be accepted by Allah? Of course it will be accepted. And it's sad to see that we are getting so many complaints about, and it's become a tradition now, just throw your parents into the old people's home. Get the care workers to look after your parents. Wallahi, it never happened in our tradition. In our tradition, we've always had a joint family system. Why? Because it was about looking after your mother, your father, until they were 6 foot under. Now it's get them off the back, just go and send, let's employ a care worker. I don't want to look after my father. I know he soils his trousers every night. He's 80 years of age. I can't give him a bath every night. Just get somebody else to do this. SubhanAllah, really? Do you forget it was your father who used to work countless nights to look after you? And now you're just throwing him away? This is a person who will be on the receiving end of the dua of Jibreel and the Ameen of our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And the final point I want to mention, youngsters, know the rights of your mother and father from what Allah and our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam has mentioned. Let me just focus on the father quickly. The hadith is collected by Imam Tirmidhi. Our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Rida al-Rabbi fi rida al-waladi." The happiness of Allah is with the happiness of the father. وَسَخَطُ رَبِّي فِي سَخَطُ الْوَالِدِ. And the anger of Allah is when your father is angry with you. If your father is angry with you all the time, you're always a nuisance, consider God, Allah, to be angry with you. If your father is happy with you, come here, son, you always do amazing things. You don't do silly things. Like sell drugs and the police are breaking our doors down at 3 o'clock in the morning and searching the whole house and making us like, you're not like that. Come here. Consider this, that Allah loves you. So this is something we need to understand. And what about the mother? See, that's why I said I want to keep this right till the end. The mother, our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, again, hadith collected by Imam Tirmidhi. Inna Allah harrama alaykum uququl ummahat. Allah hath forbidden you to be disobedient to your mothers. It's sad to see nowadays with the roadman culture. Yeah? The hearts of our mothers are being broken by young, rebellious youngsters who think it's cool to go in and out of prison, cool to stab people to death, cool to sell drugs. All of these things, because it's part of the culture, isn't it? It's YOLO, you only live once. Me against the world. I've been listening to too much rap music. It's me, I'm the G, I'm the day. Look what our religion is saying. Our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was asked, who should you love after Allah and His Messenger? He said, Ummuka. Your mother. Then the man said, Thumma man. And then who after? And then he said, Ummaka again. Marratan ukhra. Second time. Then he said, who? After your mother. He said, again your mother 3 times. And then he said, your father. Your mother has so much status in Islam. And how many hearts are being broken because of this gangster behavior? You see, when we have all these parents coming to us and they're crying, men, generally, they try and bottle it up, الرجال قوامون على النساء. The man is a bit more resolute and stuff. But when I see our mothers breaking down, it hurts me. we're the talk of the town. We told our son to stop selling drugs. He sold drugs. He kept selling drugs. Police came down in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning. They took us out on the street. Whilst they searched the house, it was embarrassing. And our son has a smirk on his face. Yeah, I've got my street profile is big now because I'm the G now. I'm going down for 3 years. Look what you're doing to your mothers. Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, he's doing tawaf around the Kaaba. Famous narration, I'll finish. A man is also doing tawaf and he's carrying his mother on his shoulders. Sweltering heat, 50 degrees, scorching heat. The man has his mother on his shoulders, making sure she doesn't feel any discomfort as he's making her do the pilgrimage going round the Kaaba. He sees the great companion Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, the son of Umar ibn Khattab, and he wants to go to him to validate whether or not he has been an obedient son. He introduces himself. Ya Abdullah, my name is Fulan Fulan. This is my mother on top of my shoulders. I have been carrying her for miles and miles, for hours and hours, to make sure she doesn't feel any discomfort. Have I been an obedient son? Have I fulfilled the rights to my mother? Have I repaid the rights? Wallahi, Abdullah said, no, wallahi, no. You have not even repaid back one kick in your mother's stomach when she was carrying you, when she was in her pregnancy. Those 9 months, that one little contraction pain that she felt, you could carry your mother for your entire life. You can't even repay back one of those kicks. Oh youth, where are we? We are so away from the teachings of our Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam and the beautiful teachings of Islam. No wonder we are failing as a society. Islam has all the answers. Yet we are looking from left to right, from this ism or this way of life, looking for this fashion and these things, yet we are finding no comfort and no success other than misery, prisons, dysfunctional families. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it easy for us to understand that being an ideal family, at the heart of this means you have to have some attachment to the deen of Allah. The deen of Allah teaches us the rights for both husband and wife, mother and father, son and daughter. And once you have all of these and you understand them and you implement them in your life, wallahi, then you will start to see signs of the ideal family. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it easy for us to implement and to act upon what has been said today. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.